Tuesday, July 14th, 1998. In the small, quiet town of Corumbá de Goiás, located 110 kilometers from Goiânia, the tranquil rhythm of daily life was about to be shattered. It was on this day that 47-year-old Antônio Carlos Mendonça and his wife, 43-year-old Marinalva Mendonça, left their home for the very last time. The couple, owners of a small market in the town's central region, were known for their punctuality and dedication. But on that morning, something broke their 15-year routine. The sky was clear, with the mild temperature typical of a dry winter in central western Brazil, when Antonio and Marinalva departed from their residence on Acacia Street around 6:15 a.m. According to neighbors, the couple left in their green 1995 Fiat Uno, heading towards a farm they had recently purchased. About 25 kilometers from town in a region known as Serra dos Pirineus. Josefa Almeida, who had worked at the market for over a decade, later told police that Antonio had mentioned the day before that he needed to check on a problem with the water pump in the farm's cistern. He told me he would be back before 10 a.m. to open the market, as he always did, Josefa stated when the disappearance was reported. Mr. Antonio was never late. He was a man of his word. The couple had 3 children: Marcelo, 24, who was studying engineering in Goiânia; Carla, 21, who worked with her parents at the market; and Rodrigo, 17, a high school student in Corumbá. It was Carla who first realized something was wrong. When she arrived at the market at 8 that morning, she found the establishment still closed. By 10:30, with no word from her parents and no way to reach them. Cell phones were a rarity back then, especially in the countryside. Carla called her older brother in Goiânia. Worried, Marcelo suggested she check if their parents had run into trouble at the farm. Carla asked João Batista, a trusted employee, for help. Together they drove to the family's rural property. Arriving around noon, they found no sign of the Mendonça's Fiat Uno, nor of the couple themselves. The house was locked. The tools in the small shed were untouched, and the newly built cistern was sealed with its concrete lid, exactly as the masons had left it weeks before. The farm, purchased with years of savings, was the couple's dream, a place where they planned to retire in a few years. At 2 p.m. that same day, Carla and João Batista returned to town and reported the disappearance to the military police. Occurrence Report number 205/1998 officially registered the disappearance of Antônio Carlos and Marinalva Mendonça, launching an investigation that would remain without answers for nearly 3 decades. The town of Corumbá was in shock. "Nothing like this had ever happened in our city," recalled Maria do Socorro, who was 78 and a neighbor of the Mendonças at the time. They were a beloved family with no known enemies. No one could understand how an entire couple could just vanish without a trace. The lead investigator, Dr. Claudio Monteiro, mobilized all available police forces. In the first 48 hours, intensive searches were conducted at the farm, on the surrounding rural roads, and throughout the Serra dos Pirineus region. A helicopter from the Goiás military police flew over the area for 3 consecutive days. But the couple's car was never found. There was no clue as to where they might have gone. The investigation initially pursued the theory of a possible kidnapping. The couple was known to be financially stable, owning the Mendonça in family market, one of the most traditional in the small town. However, no ransom demand ever came. "We investigated every detail of their lives, their bank accounts, business dealings, any possible disagreements," explained Dr. Monteiro in a press conference 1 month after the disappearance. "We found nothing to justify a voluntary disappearance or to indicate any kind of trouble." In August of 1998, the civil police discovered that 15,000 reais had been withdrawn from the couple's bank account, 2 days before they vanished. This amount, equivalent to about 150 minimum wage salaries at the time, raised suspicion that the couple might have planned to run away. Their children vehemently contested this theory. My parents would never abandon their family and the business they built with so much sacrifice, Marcelo Mendonça stated in his testimony. That money was to pay for materials for the farm's renovation. My father had mentioned it to the whole family the week before. The investigation also turned to Geronimo Santos, a farmer with land adjacent to the Mendonça's property, with whom Antonio had reportedly had disagreements over property lines. Witnesses reported that the two had argued heatedly in Corumba's central square weeks before the disappearance. In his statement, Geronimo denied any involvement. We had our differences, as any neighbors might, but we resolved everything through conversation. In fact, he invited me for a barbecue at the new farm as soon as the work was finished, he claimed. Geronimo's alibi was confirmed on the day of the disappearance. He was in another city for a doctor's appointment, a fact proven by hospital records and witnesses. A promising lead emerged in September 1998 when a green Fiat Uno, similar to the Mendonças, was spotted in a town 150 kilometers away. Police investigated, but it turned out to be a different vehicle. By the end of 1998, the investigation began to cool. Dr. Montero was transferred, and the case was handed over to a new detective, Ronaldo Vasconcelos. Under new leadership, the police began to consider the hypothesis that the couple had been victims of a robbery on the isolated rural road leading to the farm. There were records of robberies in that region, especially of vehicles that were taken to Paraguay or Bolivia, Vasconcelos explained in a report from March 1999. The couple may have resisted, and the assailants, out of panic or inexperience, ended up committing a more serious crime. This theory gained traction when, in April 1999, a gang specializing in car theft was dismantled. One of the detainees confessed to several robberies in the region, but when questioned specifically about the Mendonça couple, he denied any involvement. In December 1999, after 17 months of fruitless searching, the Mendonça case was officially classified as open, but without an immediate solution. It was transferred to the Missing Persons Division in Goiânia, where it joined hundreds of other similar cases. The years passed, but the Mendonça family never gave up. Annually, on the anniversary of the disappearance, the children organized walks through the streets of Corumbá, distributing flyers with their parents' photos, keeping the hope of finding them alive. It was as if time had stood still for us, Carla Mendonça recalled in a 2008 interview, 10 years after they vanished. We couldn't hold a funeral, couldn't truly grieve, because there's always that sliver of hope that they might be alive somewhere. The investigation received a new push in 2005 with the creation of a national program for missing persons. The Mendonça case was revisited by a specialized team from the federal police. This reinvestigation brought to light a seemingly overlooked detail. In the weeks before his disappearance, Antonio had mentioned to friends that he was concerned about the safety of the new cistern. A longtime friend, Jose Pereira, told the federal police, "He told me, Zay, that lid isn't right. I'm going to have to break it and do it again before someone falls in." This information, however, wasn't enough to change the course of the investigation, as the cistern had been checked on the day of the disappearance and appeared to be perfectly intact. The case might have remained just another unsolved mystery were it not for an unexpected event in March of 2023, nearly 25 years after the disappearance. The farm, which had remained in the family's possession, was finally sold to a businessman who planned to build a rural inn on the property. On the morning of March 17, 2023, workers began demolishing the old structures, including the cistern built by the Mendonças in 1998. a cistern that had never been used. Claudine Ferreira, the hydraulic excavator operator, was removing the old concrete lid when he noticed something unusual. When the machine broke the concrete, he later reported, I saw that there was something different down there. It looked like the cistern had no water, but there was some strange material at the bottom. Intrigued, Claudine shut off the equipment. He and the other workers approached to look. What they found left them in a state of shock. At the bottom of the cistern, partially preserved by the dry, sealed environment, were two bodies in an advanced state of decomposition. The police were called immediately. The Goiás Civil Police and a technical forensics team arrived at the scene. Initial analysis indicated the remains were of a man and a woman, both wearing clothing characteristic of the late 1990s. The bodies were positioned in a way that suggests they had fallen from above, explained the lead forensic expert. The dry, sealed environment of the cistern, which never held water, created conditions for partial preservation, which was crucial for our investigation. Among the belongings found with the bodies were a wallet with documents in the name of Antônio Carlos Mendonça and a gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant that, according to the children, belonged to Marinalva. A week later, DNA analysis confirmed it. The remains belonged to the couple who had vanished 25 years earlier. They had never left Corumbá de Goiás. They had been entombed in the cistern on their own farm the entire time. The question that remained was, how? The autopsy revealed crucial details. Both bodies showed multiple fractures consistent with a significant fall. However, Antonio's skull had a fracture that could have been caused by a blunt object. Before the fall, the evidence suggests Antonio may have been struck on the back of the head before falling into the cistern, while Marinalva only has injuries consistent with the fall, the medical examiner explained. However, due to the state of the remains, we cannot state the exact sequence of events with absolute certainty. One intriguing detail found inside the cistern was an improvised ladder made of pieces of wood and rope which appeared to have been assembled from within. This led investigators to a new theory. Our current hypothesis, explained the new lead investigator, is that Antonio went to check on the cistern as he'd said he would and had some kind of accident, possibly being struck by the unstable concrete lid itself. Marinalva, in an attempt to help her husband, also ended up falling in. With this new evidence, the civil police officially reopened the case, now investigating it as an accidental death or a possible homicide. A crucial question lingered, hanging over the small town that had finally found its missing residents. Was it a tragic, unforeseeable accident, or had the couple met a more sinister end on that quiet winter morning at the very site of their future dream? The search for the complete truth had just begun again. If the couple had fallen into the cistern, why was their car never found? This question was finally answered in April 2023, when a joint operation by the civil and military police, acting on an anonymous tip, located the remains of a green Fiat Uno. It was discovered in a dense, wooded area approximately 5 kilometers from the Mendonça farm. The vehicle was completely ravaged by time, but the license plate and chassis number confirmed it was the car that disappeared in 1998, explained Lieutenant Colonel Rodrigo Pimentel, who coordinated the operation. It was in a location with very difficult access, hidden by the vegetation that had grown around it over the last few decades. It's understandable that it wasn't found during the original searches. The discovery of the car, however, raised new questions. If the couple had died in the cistern, who had driven their vehicle to such a remote spot? The answer came from a surprising testimony. Ernesto Silveira, a former employee of a neighboring farm, was only 17 at the time of the disappearance. After seeing news reports about the discovery of the bodies, he voluntarily went to the police. In an emotional statement, he confessed, "I was riding my bike when I saw the car parked near the farm's entrance, with the keys still in the ignition," Ernesto recounted. "I looked around and saw no one. I was a foolish teenager and I saw a chance to go for a drive." He admitted to taking the car without thinking of the consequences. After a few hours, panic set in. "I ended up abandoning the car in that patch of woods and never went back," he said. Ernesto insisted he had no idea what had happened to the couple. When he learned they were missing, he was too terrified to come forward. "I have lived with this weight on my conscience for 25 years, he said. "I didn't kill anyone, but I know my actions hindered the investigation and caused the family additional suffering. I am here to take responsibility." After a detailed analysis of all the evidence, the civil police presented their official conclusion. Antônio Carlos Mendonça had gone to the farm to inspect the newly built cistern. The concrete lid, which had not been properly secured, gave way as he leaned on it, causing him to fall. When his wife, Marinalva, tried to help him, she also fell inside. "The physical evidence and testimonies indicate it was a tragic accident," concluded Delegate Leonardo Barreto. "The couple was trapped in the cistern with no way out, as the broken concrete lid partially blocked the opening. The makeshift ladder found inside shows they attempted to escape, but unfortunately they were unsuccessful." As for the sealed lid that Carla and João Batista had found in 1998, the investigation concluded it was a matter of perception. The lid was broken, but a piece of it had fallen in such a way that it appeared intact when viewed from a distance, explained forensic expert Fernando Meireles. "Without a close inspection, which was not performed at the time, it was impossible to notice the fracture." In June 2023, nearly 25 years after their disappearance, Antônio Carlos and Marinalva Mendonça were given a dignified funeral, attended by family, friends, and hundreds of residents from Corumbá de Goiás. The town, which had never forgotten the mystery of the Mendonça couple, could finally bring closure to a story that had marked generations. "It's a relief and a pain at the same time," declared their son Marcelo Mendonça at the funeral. "On one hand, we finally know what happened and can say a proper goodbye. On the other, it's devastating to know they were so close all this time, and that they might have been found sooner if the cistern had been checked more thoroughly." The Mendonça case, though solved, left important lessons for missing persons investigations in Brazil. In September 2023, the Goiás Secretariat of Public Security implemented the Mendonça Protocol, establishing guidelines for more thorough searches on properties related to missing persons, including the use of technologies like drones and thermal imaging cameras. "This case taught us that sometimes the answer is literally right under our feet," reflected the Secretary of Public Security in a press statement. "The Mendonça family's suffering will not be in vain if we can use this experience to prevent other families from going through the same ordeal." The Mendonça farm, now owned by Paulo Roberto Gomes, has been transformed not only into a rural guest house as originally planned, but also into a memorial. A small chapel was erected near the site of the old cistern, with a plaque that briefly tells the couple's story. It ends with the words, "Antonio and Marinalva Mendonça, 1951-1998. They never left home." For the couple's children, resolving the case has finally opened the door to moving forward. Their daughter, Carla, who kept the family market running all those years, shared her thoughts. "For 25 years, we lived in a limbo, unable to truly say goodbye. Now, even with all the pain of this confirmation, we can finally begin to heal these wounds that have been open for so long." The story of the Mendonças, now part of the collective memory of Corumbá de Goiás and all of Brazil, serves as a reminder of the importance of persistence in the search for truth, of a family's love that transcends time, and of the fragility of life which can change completely in an instant. If you've watched this far, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Please leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end so I can know who truly cares about the search for truth." Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends and family who are also moved by real stories that make us reflect on the value of life and truth.